Hey there, Startup Nation. Welcome back to another episode of the Private Practice Startup Podcast. I am one of your co-hosts, Katie Lemieux, hanging out with my sidekick, business partner, colleague, friend, all of the above.
What's up, Startup Nation? It's Dr. Kate
Campbell.
Yeah, Campbell.
You just wanted to she's changing it at the fourth recording of the day.
This is our fourth recording for our podcast Wednesday. Usually we're doing podcast Fridays, and it's totally a different day to have it on a Wednesday, like in the middle of the week, the busy group practice and everything like that. But it's totally cool. Actually, today's a really special day because this is our fourth episode in a row for our 2-year anniversary. We launched the podcast June 6th, 2016, 6/16, and here we are, June 6th, 2018, 2 years later, almost 100 episodes in, which actually, last episode was our 100th episode, which was a super special one. And it's
so special you'll have to wait and listen, or go back and listen, I should say.
You have to go back and listen to that one.
So we are here today joined by Pia Arrendell, and she is going to be talking to you guys about audits. Don't panic. And what to expect.
Did everybody go, eek, audit, eek? It makes you want to run the other way.
How are you, Pia?
I'm good. Thanks for having me on.
Well, thanks for joining us for this very special topic. So we're going to be talking about that shortly. If you are a loyal member of the Startup Nation family, wanted to thank you for being with us from the beginning to the middle to wherever we are now and continuing on our journey. If you're brand new to our Startup Nation superhero family, we are giving you the warm welcome, and we invite you to take advantage of our free gift to you, which is our A to Z cheat sheet, essentials for building and growing your dream practice. Head over to privatepracticestartup.com, over to the resources tab, and grab your A to Z cheat sheet. And like we've been announcing on the other episodes, is we've completely revamped the A to Z, not the cheat sheet itself, but you actually also get 5 days of private practice building emails to really help you get a jump start or refine your private practice wherever you are. Mm-hmm. So why don't we hear a message from our sponsor?
Yes, before we get started for today's episode, let's take a quick sponsor break. And as therapists, you guys want to make a greater difference in the world. And in order to do so, your clients need to have a really effective experience in their work with you. And one of the important aspects is actually having them follow through with any assignments or homework that you may give to them to work on outside of the therapy sessions. But as we know, a lot of times the clients won't follow through with homework. And so there's actually an app for that. You know how there's that saying, oh, there's an app for that. There's an app for everything. Well, there's a homework app called TheraChat, and it actually makes it really easy for you as a therapist to engage with your clients in between sessions, and clients love using it as well. You can actually use pre-made homework assignments or create your own homework assignments for clients to do in between sessions. You can transfer documents, you can send unlimited messages, and the cool thing is that it's fully secure, it's HIPAA compliant, and they have both a website and app, so it's really easy to use. The therapists who are using TheraChat describe it as revolutionary and as an essential companion. So just to try TheraChat now and experience it yourself, use the coupon code ThePrivatePracticeStartup. It's the coupon code is TPPS, as in The Private Practice Startup, and you're going to be able to get your first month for free, which is a total value of $40. Make sure to go to the show notes, be able to click the specific link that will take you to TheraChat for the coupon TPPS, and enjoy.
Yes. So I actually, this is why I love the therapist Facebook groups. I got to really enunciate that.
We've been talking for hours now. I inspired your tongue twisting moment. I had one a moment or two ago, but we're just going to roll with it.
Yeah. And so sometimes I like to look on the therapist Facebook groups, and especially on like the marketing days, right? And that's actually how I found Pia, and I reached out to her because she had posted something about audits and things like that. And I said, wow, what a great topic, because we do have quite a few people in our audience that do bill insurance, and with insurance there's a possibility of an audit. So how did you become an expert, Pia, at handling audits and not panicking?
I think fear is a great motivator, right? So I originally, before I was in private practice, I worked in transitional home for women and children, battered women and children, and we worked with the VA, a couple of different government agencies, and they would come yearly and audit our files. And so we were definitely trying to have those done the right way, and then when I went into private practice, I took several insurances, and one of them that now, in order to even pay you after so many sessions, you have to give them your notes, otherwise they won't pay you. And I work with PTSD, trauma, EMDR, so I saw people long term. So that's how I just got used to know what insurance companies would expect, what they want, how I could deliver that.
And if I remember correctly, didn't you say something like you had submitted some either billing information or audit information and something was like mixed up or whatever, and then you got like flagged and then they started auditing you like every year? Was that the story?
Yeah, I think what happened, I mean, again, I don't know what the insurance company's motivation was, but I had seen one client 3 times in a week because that person had some suicide ideation. And then I invited the family in for a session as well, and that was the 3rd session. And so when some files got pulled, that was amongst them. And then the following year, I'd done the same thing with another client that also had suicide ideation. And the same thing happened. So I don't know how that I got triggered in the system. But when I called in Blue Cross Blue Shield to ask why, they just said, well, you're on the lucky list. So every year we're going to ask for some files. And I'm like, did I like upset some auditing god in a past life or something? How did I get that lucky? So I passed all of them. So that's the great news.
Yeah, and that's what you're going to be sharing today and really help kind of ease therapist worries. And as you're sharing about your audit story, I always say I grew up in community health, mental health. I did 11 and a half years. I say it like it's a prison term, 11 and a half years in community mental health. But I was managing programs for most of that time, and we got audited, all the time from contracts and things like that. And I remember I used to run group homes, and our group homes were billed by Medicaid. And even though we had local Medicaid reps, it was like, I remember all the group homes from the entire county were there one day, and like they just speak in like these generalities and they don't give you anything clear. And it was like banging my head against the wall. And I'm like, we just want to deliver to you what you guys want. Just please tell us, like, we're happy to do it. And they're like, well, we can't really tell you how to. And we're like, oh, yep. So I actually enjoy auditing. So I'm very detail oriented, except when it comes to my own typos. So I actually enjoy auditing and enjoyed that aspect of the job, but we're really looking forward to hearing your tips and tricks on how to pass an audit and not freak out about it.
Weren't you just scheduling time in your office to go in and in your private practice to audit charts this past weekend?
It was kind of like closing, cleaning up, putting,
not necessarily auditing, but.
Yeah, when you have, I saw paper charts, right? And so it's like the chart room's all full and you're like, I don't want to pull that thing down. It's too heavy. And then you start stacking charts and I'm like, okay, time to get these like actually filed away. So it's nice and organized. But yes, that's what I was doing this weekend. Yeah. Interesting. Mm-hmm. Cool. So yeah, Pia, share with the audience a little bit about some of the things that they need to know. Can they like prepare before an audit? Like what's important when an audit comes? What do they need to know? Share with us those things.
So it used to be that you would get a letter and it would just state, this is typically like an auditing company for the insurance company themselves that wants you to pull these charts, and it has a list and the names of the people and what dates, and typically it's within the last year. And so, but the last time it happened to me, that was last year, a person came with a certified letter and I had to sign for it. And so I think they just kind of have opted because therapists won't send in the files, or I'm assuming here, but since I had to sign for it, it seemed kind of serious. So, so basically it's a letter and they just have a standard list. It seems like it also asks for like labs and x-rays and different things. So I think it's like just a generic form. And so they want this person, they want all the notes from the last year. And so, yeah, they just basically want history. But you can also say you don't have something. But they ask for just notes, intake forms, your initial intake sheet, discharge summary. I think that's the 3 things that they ask for.
They don't ask for treatment plans?
They did. I have not seen that yet.
Interesting.
Yeah, they did not ask for that.
So how long do they actually give you to prepare the documents and send them the copies of your charts?
2 weeks. But you can call them and just tell them if you're out of town or you don't have time for some reason, maybe you're extremely busy. I think I did that the first. I've been audited 3 times by Blue Cross, and I didn't. The first time I just called them and said, "I'm out of time. I think I'm out of town." I think it was during the summer, and they were like, "That's fine. You can have another 2 weeks." So,
And so I'm sure some of our audience is wondering whether they take insurance or not, or if they're like kind of first hearing about this. Is, what about release of information? Like, do you get a release of information for your client, or is that already in your consent? Like, hey, by the way, because I take insurance, I may be audited, so that's just part of the process, and they're signing at that time. How do you handle all of that, and what's, I guess, required by HIPAA?
So I already have that in my consent form, that since they're using a third-party payer, that's a chance that my file could get audited. I have also called my clients and just told them, listen, I got this request. What do you think about that? And I actually had one client that said, I don't want them to have my chart. And I said, well, then you can call Blue Cross Blue Shield, or I can give you this number, or we can call them together on a 3-way call, and we can talk to them about exactly what it is that they want and how you feel about me sending that in. So
I'm curious, what was the outcome of that situation with the insurance company?
the insurance then asked if I would write a summary letter of diagnosis, treatment interventions, outcome, and whether they're still seeing me or not, or, that was pretty much it.
I really like the approach on how you empowered your client and supported your client through that process, because it is their medical record, you know what I mean? And this is kind of where we talk about like the limits of confidentiality in regards to, insurance companies, third-party payers, and things like that.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so once you send in the documents and they're auditing it, like, then what's their process? What do you know? Have they ever taken money back, or what's the reason that they take money back? I know I just threw like a ton of questions at you, like I usually do. My mind just starts running. Sorry.
Just one.
What's the process after you send in the information?
So the first time I was really nervous about the outcome of my audit, right? So I called them myself and I'm like, did you really receive all of that? And they're like, yeah, you passed with flying colors. And the reality is the person's file, I don't think anybody would have had the time to completely read it. So I don't know how they did that. I don't know what the process is on the other end, but if you have to send something in, first of all, you can always call and ask if you can have more time, right? All they can tell you is no. And then once you send it in, you can always follow up and check in with them. That is better, I think, than walk around and being nervous about it.
Gotcha.
So knowing that your charts could be audited and, called to be submitted, how much do you decide to actually write in your notes with what your clients are telling you and what to keep out as far as detail wise? How do you navigate that?
I'm actually super vague in my notes unless somebody is suicidal or homicidal or there's something that I need to report. I don't work with children anymore, but if there's some kind of mandatory reporting, I document that so much in all its details. But besides from that, so my first note starts out, and the first thing I want to do as a clinician is to justify my diagnosis, because that is what the insurance company want in order to pay me and in order to verify that it's billable. And so that's the first thing. And so that's straight out of the DSM for me. I have that pre-written in a document that I have done with people when I've done a consulting hour. Is I've taken all these disorders that I typically treat and I have typed out everything that they would have in order to qualify for that diagnosis. And so I go over that with them, and that's my first note. And in the bottom of the note, I have whether somebody has suicide ideations or not. If they deny it, I state that. And then the last couple of sentences is a short treatment plan, which is basically these are the goals for treatment. It could be emotion regulation skills or decrease anxiety and depression, doing A, B, and C. And then the modality that I'm going to use, whether it's individual or couples counseling or whether it's cognitive behavioral or EMDR. Mm-hmm. And that's my first note. And I don't write anything about people's personal lives. I just write their symptoms. That's it. I don't put any details about they're fighting with their husband or none of that. It's straight out of the DSM and why I would give them that diagnosis.
So in subsequent notes, how do you determine what you include?
So then I refer back to the diagnosis, right? I would write, for instance, how my first couple of sentences is about the person's state of mind, what level their anxiety is at, and then topics of discussion like relationship dynamics or stressors in the person's life. And then after that, it's interventions. And then so it's state of mind, the theme of the session, the interventions that I use. And so if I've used EMDR interventions, I'll state that. If I have used cognitive behavioral interventions, I'll state that. And then at the end of it, how they're progressing, what's getting better and what still needs to work.
As you talk at our world, well, Kate and I, in helping other therapists build and grow their practices, we're always talking about marketing and how to market to your clients. And we really talk in like layman's terms. And so in our notes specifically, and especially if you bill insurance, you're actually going to talk all the therapist jargon. So all the stuff that we talk about, you have to talk about that. Like, don't talk about like marketing stuff that way. That's really important, and really identifying all those treatment-based interventions, the things that insurance companies want to see and things like that. So this is where we use our therapist jargon. And maybe it's just because we're always so in the marketing talk, and we don't use therapist jargon all the time or a lot, but this is definitely the place for it.
Yeah, and same thing. I don't use these terms with clients, right? I don't talk about cognitive behavioral therapy. I talk about what do you feel? What do you think? What are your stressors this, what were your stressors this week? That kind of stuff. Definitely not. But insurance companies, honestly, my understanding is that they want to know what I did. Right? So the person presented with PTSD, and what did we do to work on that in the session? And so they want all my interventions for that.
And so when they've told you, like, you've passed your audits with flying colors, do they tell you what you've done well, like what they want to keep seeing?
Nope.
No, right. Exactly. The vagueness.
They don't really overwhelm me with information, I have to say.
Okay.
So yeah, nothing but beyond that. So and then at the end they want a treatment plan, discharge plan, and my discharge plan is basically just check marks, right? Mm-hmm. Basically, how many times did I see the client? Did they progress or not? And did they get a referral? Where did they go afterwards? Mm-hmm. Very simple. Mm-hmm. I've turned my life into copy and paste, basically, and check marks.
When it comes to your practice.
Which brings up another thing, and I'm not endorsed by them, but I use Note Designer. Have you heard of it to write my notes?
No, we'll definitely put that on our show notes.
It's amazing. It's like you pay a one fee and you can install it on your computer, and then basically you open it up and it's so you can, all the feelings come up. So you just click on the feelings that your client has. And then there are all these themes, like hundreds of them, and you can add them. If you do specific type of therapy, you can add some yourself and click on them. And then there are interventions, and then how the client progressed. And it's pre-written sentences. It's already, I don't know if they checked on if they would pass an audit, but it's beautiful. I mean, they're amazing. I swear by it. And you just basically click your note, and there it is. And you can just copy and paste it into whatever your electronic health record is, whether it's Simple Practice or there's a couple other ones.
And is that a one-time fee or it's a monthly reoccurring cost?
It's a one-time fee.
Wow, that's a really cool resource. We haven't heard of that yet.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, we'll have to look into that.
We'll add that into the show notes for sure.
And I think you can download it on several computers. So even if a group practice wanted to share it, you can do that.
That's great. And so you had mentioned you use an EHR, you Simple Practice, or you said okay. And so then you're able to upload the note into Simple Practice is what you're saying?
Yeah, I just write it in Note Designer, and then I just copy and paste it straight into Simple Practice, and it's done. 20, maybe 30 seconds if I have to add somebody's medication change at the bottom of the note.
Nice. So, that's really speedy.
Yeah. And so just Out of curiosity, I mean, I know you use Simple Practice, so you probably can only speak on them, but in the case of an audit, do they have a HIPAA compliant way to send the information, or do you actually have to print it out and put it in the mail? Like, how do you send it?
That's
Or
how,
secure
well, I
fax or
think
whatever.
you can fax it to them.
Okay.
If you have one of those great fax machines where you can just stick the whole file, and it would just do all the pages for you. Otherwise,
Sure.
it takes forever. But otherwise, I just print them out and put them in the mail and then
Okay.
send them in.
And then do they send you like a document after, like your case has been reviewed, you've passed? Nothing.
Nothing.
I
This
can
is the
see where
case
the
of-
anxiety is here.
No news is good news.
No news is good news, but I would want to know something just so I don't,
Yeah. Hence, the first time I did it, I called them back. I'm like, did you get it? How did it go? Do you need anything else? And they're like, no, you're fine.
So what, I mean, it sounds like you passed your audits, like you said, with flying colors. So the two, I think you said two different cases where you saw the client 3 times that week because they were suicidal. They were just probably wanting to check like why
Yeah.
you were seeing them 3 weeks, and then you had the notes to substantiate that, and that's really important. And when I used to actually like teach note writing in the programs that I ran, we talked about that, like being vague in regular notes, but we said if there's a critical incident, right,
Yeah.
child abuse, confidentiality breach, things like that, is you want to do the he said, she said, like this happened, this happened, this happened. So cool. So any other kind of final thoughts for therapists in regards to audits?
Yes. So I had actually, in one file that got pulled, I had billed the wrong client, same initials, wrong client, right? So now the bills I had sent to the insurance company did not match the client. So I had a little bit of a freak out moment.
Little hiccup there. Yeah.
I should say that was pretty intense. And so the person that does my billing, her name is Victoria Benson. She's awesome. I called her. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm freaking out. She's like, Pia, relax. I'll handle this. And so she just called the insurance company and told them what happened and that the file was getting audited. She sent in a remittance where you correct a claim, and then we just attached that to the file, and it was fine. So,
Crisis averted.
I know. I mean, when you sit there with your own thoughts, or when you talk to people who've never been audited before, maybe, it's you can have all your fears come up about what could possibly happen, and none of it has happened yet. So that's pretty good.
Great.
I mean, in the case of a mistake of billing like that, we're human, and
Exactly.
It's so easy to make a mistake like that. But then on the flip side, you see so much happening with like insurance fraud and Medicare fraud, and we're down here in South Florida, and there's a lot of Medicare and Medicaid fraud. We're like one of the highest areas in the company, or in the country. And I actually worked for a company at one point in time. I'd left the company like 9 months before they got in huge trouble with the feds for $69 million in
Oh my gosh.
in fraud. It
Chills
was,
as you talk about that story.
it was so scary. Yeah. So when you were just talking about this little mistake, obviously we're human. We're going to make mistakes. We have to try and, do our best to avoid them. Mistake is very different from actual insurance fraud, but I would be in that moment like, oh my God, they're going to think I'm trying to do fraud. And I would be like totally freaking out.
You know what's interesting that you said? I was talking to my chiropractor, and we're talking audits for some reason, and he knows someone who like does Medicaid fraud, and he goes, unless you're doing like fraudulent of 2 million or above, Medicaid doesn't even want to look at you because you're a little cheese. So unless you're like that big time, and if you're a solopreneur, I'm sure you're not billing 2 million because you don't have enough hours in the day. So if you make a little mistake, I think you're okay.
I think,
As long as you correct it.
But the problem is when you sit there by yourself and you're going through
Yes.
your files and you start noticing mistakes, then you're like, right? And so I've talked to so many therapists who want to do the right thing, and I, and again, we've heard stories where people have had to pay back money because they were missed something out of a file. I think that's typically also with Medicaid. A couple of years ago where they were like, yeah, this is what we want your treatment plan, we want your notes, and then they would send you back that fax that said, yeah, we accept this treatment plan, but that doesn't mean that there's no problems with it. It's like, that's not very reassuring. And then I actually know a couple of therapists that I had to pay back money. And so unless you're like independently wealthy, you don't want to pay back money. And it can be really nerve-wracking to not know exactly what has to be in a file, or maybe you feel like you're not confident with your notes and don't know if the right thing is in the note, right? So it can be really reassuring to just know, okay, this is the stuff I put in and it's done.
Do you have any recommendations or resources either for therapists that maybe want some better training on note writing and or like a checklist in preparing for an audit? Do you have anything like that or know of any?
I actually have a whole training process. It's a 1 hour that if
Perfect.
anybody wanted to do that, they could contact me and I'll be glad to do that. Or I don't know who else has it, honestly.
And did they contact you through your website? Because I know we have your website, or is it a different?
If they go to my website, there's a contact page and they can contact me. They can also go to my Facebook page, which is my name, Pia Arrendell, LMFT, and contact me through there, and I'll be glad to help. I have sent people a file that, of course, all the personal information had been taken out, but it was actually one that was audited and it passed. And so they'll have an example of what needs to get done and they can do it. So, and then I'm available for questions afterwards.
Okay, great.
Wonderful.
And
That's
we
a
have
great
your
resource. Yeah, thank you for sharing
contact
that with Startup
information
Nation.
for sure. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being with us here today and sharing about your expertise on auditing in regards to insurance-based practices. It's so important. And so Startup Nation, we hope you join us next time for Carol Clark, who is the creator of TheraLink. And this was really cool when we had done one of our paperwork webinars. The COO of the company had just happened to be on our webinar, and we gave TheraLink a shout out as a resource because they do HIPAA compliant video sessions. And then we created this nice little relationship. And so Carol is going to join us next time. I was going to say today, next time. That's what happens when you do 4 hours of podcast
Yeah, we're not doing
recording,
5
right?
today, just 4.
No.
Just 4.
So join us next time for that, all about video counseling and HIPAA compliance and all that good stuff. We'd love to hear your rates and reviews. Feel free to rate us or review us on iTunes, on Google, on Facebook. It just continues us to stay inspired by you, allowing us to inspire you from startup to
Share the
mastery.
love. Yep,
Share the
hashtag
love.
share the love.
Have a fantastic day, everybody. And until next time, whenever that is, maybe it's like right now, maybe you're like you're doing a podcast
binging.
marathon.
Yep, you're binging on the podcast.
Netflix.
Yep.
But anyways, so until next time, guys, you guys are amazing. We'll talk to you soon.
See you next time.